Welcome to Tiny Show and Tell Us, the bonus series where you write in with your favorite science news or factoid, we read your email aloud, and then dive deeper. I'm Sam Jones, and I am here with my co-host, Deboki Chakravarti.
Hi, Sam. Last time we talked about food waste. We also talked about birds breathing through their butts, which is still breaking my mind a little. And if you want to break our minds a little bit more, remember that we're always looking for you to write into us to be featured in one of these episodes. So email tinymatters@acs.org or fill out the form linked in the episode description with your tiny show and tell us. So Sam, I am here with a message from listener Tiffany, who wrote, recently there was a creation of a biodegradable polymer that outperforms commercial superglues. Researchers have engineered this eco-friendly adhesive to provide strong bonding capacity while reducing environmental impact. This innovation represents a significant step forward in sustainable materials science.
Interesting.
So we'll start with the material and then we'll talk a little bit about how they made it and why that's exciting environmentally. So the material is called poly-3-hydroxybutyrate, but we're going to just call it P3HB, which I kind of like.
Much easier.
Yeah, much easier, a lot smoother. And so what is really cool about it is that the material itself, it's something that can be made by microbes, which I always love. I like a microbe making something. But the problem is that when they're making it, it's not actually adhesive. So what scientists had to do, they found this material. They were like, there's something promising about it. It can be made by microbes, but we want to turn it into an adhesive. And so to do that, they had to figure out how to mess with it chemically. And this gets super technical, super fast. But the way that I understood it is they're basically messing around with the carbons in this material to get this balance between stretchiness and crystalness so that you get a material that can do adhesion, which is really cool. Chemistry is so weird. Like you just mess around with like the arrangements of atoms a little and it just like completely changes material properties. And the result was a glue. And it was also cool because based on kind of the rearrangements they're doing, they can tune how strong this glue is. So that's like a really neat aspect of it in terms of like when you think of
that is cool. Because like you don't necessarily you want something that's like a super glue for some instances, but in others, you don't want something necessarily bonded forever.
So they made a few different arrangements and tested out which ones could actually work adhesively and like which ones could actually be a glue. And when they did that, they found a glue that was stronger than the super glue options that are commonly available right now. So they wanted to test out how strong the glue actually was. And so one of the ways they could do that is they would seal up like cardboard boxes and other things on steel plates and kind of just see how strong it was.
Yeah.
And they found that it could hold 20 pounds in place. And in comparison, there were existing adhesives that are out there that couldn't even hold 15 pounds in place.
Whoa.
So that's pretty strong, I think. Like it feels pretty strong to me. I don't know what life is like as a glue to like fully imagine that, but it feels like a lot.
I'm thinking about like how much my dogs weigh.
Right. Yeah.
You know, like they're chunky gals and they're like dense and they're like 27 pounds, which is a lot, but still like 20 pounds that's heavy for a glue to hold.
Right. And so the other exciting aspect of this compared to other glues available on the market is that it's biodegradable.
Right.
And, you know, obviously, if you think about glue, one of the inherent things about glue is that it is hard to break down. Like that's what it's meant to do. It's meant to be strongly bonded to things. And so that's great when you're trying to put something together. But also, we're getting rid of lots of things. And when we get rid of things, we do also need them to eventually break down. And so having glues that are not good at breaking down is a challenge. You know, it leads to more waste than we like maybe initially even think of.
Yeah.
So having this option that's biodegradable, it's not made from petroleum, unlike a lot of those, you know, main options right now. And it can also be used on a number of different materials. In the articles, they mentioned aluminum, glass, and wood. It's potentially really exciting. So
that is so cool. I feel like you hear a lot about these like biodegradable polymers and people like it's a need.
Yep.
Like it's something that a lot of chemists seem to be working on because it would be really valuable if we had something that was biodegradable, that was this adhesive available on the market, right?
Yep.
Like I would 100% want to.
Right.
I think then the other question you have is like the tricky stuff with biodegradable things is that they're excellent if you want them to degrade, but then the concern is like, would I have something that then gets a little bit wet and then all of a sudden
it just dissolves. Yeah.
So it's tricky, but it's like, how do you get something that does its job well, but also can degrade, but isn't going to degrade too soon.
Yeah, that does the thing that's the opposite of its job when you need it to do the thing that's the opposite of its job.
Right. I mean, that's part of the reason why, like, plastics are still reigning supreme in a lot of industries because, like, they last.
Yep.
And that makes them horrible for our environment, but it makes them really useful.
Yep.
And so it's the trade-off. I mean, there's a lot of alternatives to plastic in most scenarios that really we should be using.
Yeah.
But, like, in some cases, you're kind of stuck.
Yeah, it's hard to find the right alternative. So I'm really curious, like, what other approaches people are taking to this problem. Because, yeah, you know, you think of, like, the big objects or something that you're, like, getting rid of, or I don't know, just, like, any waste. I'm like, yeah, the thing is the waste. But I didn't think about the glue. Like, yeah, the glue is a part of the components.
Yeah. And even, like, boxes that you get sometimes have, like, a little portion that's glued.
Right.
You know?
Yeah.
It's cardboard. It's not dyed. It'll be pretty easy to recycle.
No.
Apparently not as easy as you think.
No.
Well, thanks to Boki, and thank you to Tiffany for writing in. I have a tiny show and tell us from listener Nick, who wrote in saying, I work in the electric utility business, and sulfur hexafluoride, or FS6, is used in high voltage equipment. Two fun, and Nick put fun in quotes, facts. SF6 is a severe greenhouse gas, and the utility industry is looking for alternatives like nitrogen. It makes for larger equipment. And the other fact is that if one breathes it in, it's like the opposite of helium and it makes your voice deep. I understand one needs to be careful when doing this because while helium will float out of your lungs, the density of FS6 means it can linger in your lungs. When a college professor demonstrated, he leaned over and pushed on his diaphragm to evacuate his lungs.
Oh my God. Wow, you've been on a real, like, breathing kick.
Yeah, I know. I feel like this happens a lot where all of a sudden I'm like, so is this my new thing? Am I going to just be talking about diaphragms?
Yeah, last time you thought butts was your new thing, but actually it turns out lungs is your new thing.
Yeah. Okay, so let's talk about sulfur hexafluoride. So it's a synthetic odorless gas that's made of a sulfur surrounded by 6 fluorine atoms. And according to National Grid, it's used in the electricity industry because it's highly stable, meaning it's not going to easily form other compounds or degrade. So that's very important because if you're using it and then it's like combining with other elements all the time, that's not so useful and probably super dangerous. And yes, it would be super dangerous because sulfur hexafluoride is also used in high voltage equipment like circuit breakers, which are there to protect electrical power stations from power surges that maybe are caused by lightning strikes or like other events that would cause a huge increase in current. So SF6 gas circuit breakers use sulfur hexafluoride as what's called an arc quenching insulating medium, which really just means that it's a material that stops the electrical arc that forms when a circuit is open. So it absorbs that energy and then blocks it from continuing to conduct electricity. And apparently it's much more effective at dissipating heat than other elements or compounds like air or nitrogen. And so there are a lot of things about it that sound kind of great, right? But like Nick mentioned, it's quite the greenhouse gas. So according to the EPA, it is the most potent greenhouse gas known to date.
Oh my God.
I had no idea. I had absolutely no idea. Like I feel like we just hear about like carbon dioxide and methane.
Right.
Yeah.
But they're like, no, this is the most greenhouse of the gases.
Yeah. So this is a wild stat. So the agency says, quote, over a 100-year period, SF6 is 23,500 times more effective at trapping infrared radiation than an equivalent amount of carbon dioxide.
Wowie.
Yikes. Like I mentioned, like one of the things that's so appealing to like the electrical industry in using SF6 is that it's very stable. But that also means that it hangs out in our atmosphere for over 1,000 years. So it's more effective at trapping like heat, essentially, and then it sticks around. So for comparison, carbon dioxide is thought to hang out between 300 and 1,000 years, whereas methane will stick around for only 12 years. And I'm not saying like methane's great. Like we don't want that in our atmosphere, a lot of excess methane in our atmosphere either. Yeah, right? But methane compared to CO2 also absorbs more energy, not as much as sulfur hexafluoride, but still more. And so methane is more potent, but it sticks around for less time. But yeah, like compared to either of these things, a small amount of SF6 could have a significant impact on global warming. Now let's talk about breathing, SF6.
Yeah.
Don't do it. Like, I'm going to get into the science.
Sam cannot emphasize enough. Do not do it.
Yeah, like I truly, in my notes, in bold and italicized, do not breathe in this gas. But yeah, like I'm going to get into the science of it and how it impacts the sound of your voice. But I just want to repeat that because this is not condoning that behavior.
Yeah.
Very important. It's interesting, but don't do it.
Yeah.
So don't do it for a number of reasons. It can actually lead to asphyxiation if you inhale really large amounts. So like, guys, I'm serious. Don't do it. Okay, so let's talk about how it impacts your voice. So when you breathe, your vocal cords vibrate and you emit a sound. Like you speak, you sing.
Mm-hmm.
When you breathe in something that's not air, it can influence that pitch, which is so cool. So helium is lighter than air, and that means that sound travels faster in helium.
Oh, right.
And that's what makes your voice sound really high.
Yeah.
I had no idea.
Yeah.
But then let's say you breathe in a heavier gas, like a gas that's heavier than air, like sulfur hexafluoride, then your voice sounds lower. The sound is actually moving more slowly through the sulfur hexafluoride than it would if it was just air, which is so interesting.
Right.
I would have never thought of that. Like I really didn't. It's so logical.
Yeah.
But I didn't think at all at this point about like specifically why helium makes your voice so high. I just was like, oh, that's so funny. But then, also because FS6 is so much heavier than air, it will displace oxygen in your lungs, and that is what could cause asphyxiation. So again, don't do it. But fascinating science.
Yeah, that is really fascinating. You're right. Like for some reason, I just never thought about why helium does that with your voice, but it's like, oh, that makes a lot of sense. Thank you, Sam. That was really cool. And thank you to Tiffany and Nick for submitting to Tiny Show and Tell Us, a bonus episode from Tiny Matters, created by the American Chemical Society and produced by Multitude. And a big thank you to science journalist Tien Nguyen, who did the research for this episode.
You can send us an email to be featured in a future Tiny Show and Tell Us episode at tinymatters@acs.org. Or you can fill out the form that's linked in the episode description. We'll see you next time.